I tend to be early. I tend to be early to things because I'm worried about being late, right? And I don't want to be late. So that's kind of how that ends up manifesting for me. And that's not great either because it wastes a lot of time. Welcome to Divergent Paths, the podcast where we explore what it means to build a life that actually works for your brain. I'm Dr. Regina McMenomy, and yes, I'm a doctor, but not that kind of doctor, and this is not medical advice. Today, we're diving into something that affects so many neurodivergent folk, time blindness. If you've ever sat down to answer one email and then suddenly looked up hours later, or have found yourself perpetually running late despite really trying not to, you are not alone. We'll break down what's actually happening in the brain, how time blindness shows up in real life, and what you can do to work with your brain instead of fighting against it. So stay tuned, and thanks for listening to Divergent Paths.
You've told me in so many episodes that, and we'll reveal in one of these episodes, I'll figure out if I do have ADHD. We'll get the diagnosis. We'll have that episode.
We'll get that. There will be that episode.
that'll celebrate our 100th episode or whatever it is.
Right.
But the thing that you've said to me is, one of the things that, you hang out with kind of like-minded people.
Yes.
And I am, around a lot of people that I'm noticing that have the traits that we talk about this show.
Yep.
And one of those things actually that I wanted to ask you about is, I guess, consideration for time, or what you've called it here is time blindness.
Right.
I notice a lot of that. And
well, how are you? Give me an example. Like, what are you seeing?
There's a few things that I see. First of all, just completely ignoring time, like it just doesn't exist.
Right. Yep.
And then, I guess you could call it also time blindness of like how long something's going to take. So like you say something's going to take 2 hours, but it takes 3 days, or so you overestimate, underestimate time. Or
because I was going to say the flip is true of that too, where you think something's going to take a lot of time.
Right. And it only takes
only takes 10 minutes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there's that. And then I've also noticed that, I guess this is another flip, is just over concern about time when it doesn't really need to be a concern. So I guess there's just a lot of things around time that I see with people that I know. And I'm of course, because we're doing this podcast, I'm noting these things a lot more
aware.
Oh, got to talk to Regina about this. So this is one of them. So tell me, what exactly is time blindness?
So time blindness is essentially what you're describing in all of those aspects. It is overestimating how long it's going to take to do something. It's underestimating how long it's going to take to do something. It's really just a lack, I won't say a lack of understanding of the passage of time, but a difficulty recognizing perhaps time. So this also, it contributes to difficulties being on time to things, missing deadlines, having a hard time transitioning between activities. And if we want to look a little bit at the neuroscience of this, like why this ends up happening in autism and ADHD, a little bit more for ADHD than autism. One of the things about the developmental delay is you have a reduction in the development of your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for your executive functioning. So when you have a delay in your executive functioning era developing, that planning, the prioritization, the figuring out how long things take, and impulse control all end up, compromised by that developmental delay. And so that's where this particular struggle comes from. So people with neurodivergent minds don't have a picture of time as a linear thing. They have an either or. It's either now or not now. Like you're either doing things in the present. They're really hard to conceptualize future. It's really hard to like think about things, when like that overwhelming urge to like, it has to be done now. Like I can point to many times in my life where I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait. This has to happen now. When it doesn't necessarily, but the pressure of my brain is like, and then I learned like a lot of times, I think some learned behavior that comes out of this is if I don't do it now, I'm not going to remember to do it later. Like if I get an email that, needs responding, if I don't do it when I first get that email, I don't always remember to go back and do it later.
Right.
Or
so you gotta
text messages, things like
that. You gotta make it a priority, or else it,
if it's something important that needs to get done and I've been triggered to do it, I feel the pressure to do it in that moment. Even if I'm on like, I need to leave the house in 15 minutes to get to the doctor's office, I will still often prioritize getting whatever it is done because I'm afraid that I'm going to forget and not get back to it, and that'll have other repercussions.
Gotcha. Like I would say a lot of people call this being irresponsible or being lazy.
Sure.
Like those are what people would say.
That is what people would say.
Not saying that's right.
No, but it is like,
there's a certain amount of shame around this, right?
Oh, there's definitely shame around this, especially if you do struggle with, being late. I work the other way. I think that I've seen this manifest where people just are chronically late. Or I am so worried about being late. And because my ADHD and my undiagnosed ADHD gave me so much anxiety that I tend to be early. I tend to be early to things because I'm worried about being late. Right. And I don't want to be late. So that's kind of how that ends up manifesting for me. And that's not great either because it wastes a lot of time.
Right. And doesn't that, I mean, when you think about that, I think about you saying when you're wasting time and, some of the other stuff that we've talked about, it's like, that means that dishes aren't getting done, or sorry, I bring up the dishes again, but other things aren't getting done as well, because now you're focused on something else, one thing. So you have to sort of make that one thing happen, right? Like, so these other things you can't get in the way.
Right. And it's one of the other things that we've talked about in other episodes is having trouble prioritizing tasks, right? That's part of the executive function overwhelm, is having a hard time choosing what really needs your focus when, right? And that then ties back to other things we've talked about in terms of like interest-based nervous system, right? So you have to do what your nervous system is interest-based, so you're more likely to do what your nervous system finds interesting.
Right.
Versus those mundane things like washing the dishes and cleaning the kitchen and et cetera, et cetera. Like we went, I was getting my daughter ready this morning to leave the house, and she went to have a bowl of cereal, and she's like, I need a spoon. I don't have any spoons in my drawers because I haven't handled my dishes. I've done them since this, but I hadn't done dishes for like 3 days, and I had run the dishwasher, so there were clean spoons in the dishwasher, but I hadn't unloaded it, right? Because just in the flow of the last couple of days, taking care of that wasn't the priority. And and we know, and it should be well established by anybody who's listened to the show more than once, that dishes are the bane of my existence.
Exactly. I almost hated to bring it up.
No, you didn't.
Right, I didn't. No, I paused a second. There was a second of a pause.
Like, oh, maybe I should.
Not very long. There was a second of a pause. So, okay, does the okay, so does having the deadline itself, just to having I have to get this done by this date, does that alone just like cause like unneeded anxiety, or just a bit of anxiety, like a lot of anxiety, just because you know that data is coming? Like, talk about, I guess, I
The
hate to say talk
problem.
about the timeline, but we're talking about the timeline here of when this becomes a problem. Like, is it like you get a deadline and then do you instantly feel anxious about it, or do you, and are you more anxious about it leading up to it, or is it like you go into planning mode and you're just, okay,
There's
I've
no
got this
planning
thing to
mode.
do? Okay.
There's no planning mode generally. Um, there is either this needs to be done or it doesn't need to be done.
Okay.
So like when I do have a deadline, and I trained myself out of this at different points in my life. I have struggled more and less with this. When I was writing my dissertation, I struggled less with this because I was very committed to finishing my degree in 5 years. And a lot of people who go into humanities PhD programs, like I went into take 10 to 15 years to do their PhDs, and I was not doing this. I was
Right.
finishing in 5 years. I already had a master's degree. I needed to be just done with school. And I was very committed to that. And, I even had like people I worked with who were like, why are you rushing through this? And I'm like, I have a life. I need to be out of this. So like in that era of my life, I didn't have that. Like I was very mindful. There was a very set plan. There were, I managed to make rituals both around writing and about how to shape, like a big writing project needs to be broken down into multiple pieces, right? So I had 5 chapters I needed to write, and each chapter had its own goal, it had its own timeline, and so I had each one sort of, chunked out. And I set it up so there were some pressure prompted things that happened. So my one of the chapters I had to write was my methodology chapter, which was talking about how I did the research, right? So that's one of the things. Like your first chapter, you set up what you're talking about. Your second chapter, you talk about your methodology, like why, how you did the research. So I set myself I was attending a conference in New Zealand on my methodology chapter. So I needed to have that chapter done so that I could fly across the world and present it at a conference, right? And that was the carrot. Like now I understand that was the dopamine. Like I went to New Zealand, man, this is one of the best trips of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I used that to drive the nervous system, right? To drive the interest in my nervous system, to get what was the most boring chapter of my dissertation to write, because it was like how I did my research. Like it's not writing about the research, it's not writing about the topic, it's doing the the nuts and bolts of it. So I set that as this thing. So I managed to create an environment to get that chapter done, right? And I knew enough about myself that the other chapters were a lot easier to write because I was interested in what I was writing about, but that was going to be the hardest one. So I made it more interesting by adding that. So that created an environment that allowed me to plan, because the goal was so pressing and so exciting for me. Now, if I don't have that, like right now, you and I are preparing to present a panel in a couple of months, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go into a simpler type of planning mode for that, where I'm going to want to like put together our questions and our topics and the things that we're doing, because the big dopamine reward is just sitting out there and I know it's there and it's going to be great, right? So I can start planning. So I guess it depends sometimes on what the deadline is. Now, if it is something like I need to do a bunch of paperwork for the doctor's office, that ends up being done like when I'm pushed up against the wall for it, because I can't get the dopamine or the interest-based nervous system to ignite to do it until it's like, you have to do this. Like you can't wait anymore. It needs to be done. It needs to be in front of somebody tomorrow morning. Like, so
I'm so okay, you know how like whatever, like 4 o'clock, I get hungry, right? The whole body clock
right.
thing is just
Yeah.
kind of big with me. Like I don't wake up to an alarm, I just wake up. because I know it's 7:00 or 6:45 or,
Right.
So it is like the body clock sort of off when you're with time blindness?
Yeah,
As well?
definitely. You're not queuing on, and I don't know, it's hard because, like I don't cue really well on daylight necessarily. 'Cause I live really far north, so there's a lot more daylight up here than there is like
Yeah.
where you're at.
Right.
Days are just longer in general.
Mhm.
And so I will get confused when the time starts to change, when it starts to get into like summer. I will still think it's like noon because it's so bright out at like 6 o'clock. And I'll think, oh, I have so much time left in the day.
Right.
But I don't. It's like, oh, it's dinner time, and I forgot that I have, a small human I need to feed.
So how do you sort of, just go with it? Like, how do you, and instead of going against it, like, how do you, work with time blindness?
I have a couple of strategies. One is kind of around food. It's around making sure I remember to eat lunch, which is the meal that I have the hardest time remembering to eat. I will, like, we drink coffee, right? So like my coffee ritual always reminds me to eat breakfast. I had to kind of like create some separate rituals to help me remember to eat lunch. So I had to kind of pace my day around, making sure I would remember that, my body needs fuel during the day. Um, and some of the other things I have done to help, like with time blindness, I've talked about this a little bit. I used what was called the Pomodoro technique when I was writing my
Mm-hmm.
dissertation, where I wrote 25-minute chunks and then took a 5-minute break. One of my favorite things, and Russ and I record on video, even though we don't, show on videos. I have this visual timer. So what's nice about this is it shows you, like, you can see
Oh,
the
that's
time
cool.
passing,
Yeah.
right? And so I will set, if I'm struggling with a task, if I'm struggling with initiating and getting started doing something, I will set a timer for 5 minutes and say, okay, you just need to write for 5 minutes. Like, and it doesn't even have to be on topic, just start getting some words out. And if I am on deadline or I'm needing to get something done writing wise, once I kind of get started with that, even if I'm writing, I have nothing to say. And this is, words are hard and I hate looking at the blank page, my cat's meowing or whatever it is. Like, as long as I start getting those words out, I'll write myself into writing what I need to be working on. Right. Like, and sometimes it takes just that initiation. But the visual timers are helpful because they give you a reference point. So if I was going to be doing something like the Pomodoro method now, I would be using one of these timers. You can get really big ones. You can get wall-sized timers like these that are really good,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you have small humans. And you're like, okay, we need to clean your bedroom. And you put this in their room with this really big one and you set it for 15 minutes and say, okay, we're going to do nothing but pick up clothes off the floor for 15 minutes and that's it. And then you're going to, like go through and that's what you're going to do. I do the same thing with songs sometimes, like, okay, I started setting up a cleaning the house. I have like 3 house cleaning playlists on my music app. So one is like, I just need to do a really quick clean of my kitchen, say, and I want to clean for 15 minutes. So I have 15 minutes worth of high energy songs. And I will put that playlist on and I will clean for 15 minutes. And then when the playlist ends, I'm like, okay, I can stop now. But usually the motivation's like, okay, now I'll just get everything done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm tired and it's like, okay, I did 15 minutes. I'm good with what I'm at now. So things like that.
Nice. I actually, like, while you were talking,
Yeah.
so us recording this, it's noon right now. My
Right.
little Google Home speaker just said lunchtime. It's noon.
Yes, I know people who've done that too, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, I have
remember.
that, and then I actually have a timer that shuts off the lights in the office here at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or something like that. So that
Nice.
it's like, okay, gotta stop working.
It's time to the,
Yeah.
it's
And
time to phase out of
I've been
this.
recording podcasts during those times, and the lights go off as though I'm trying to do an interview or something.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the tools are great, and like the Pomodoro timer. I would also say what um uh uh like those I forget what they're called, but just sort of the to-do tracking when you move stuff from one,
Oh,
to
right.
another, the
One
Kanban
bucket to
boards,
another.
Kanban
Yeah.
boards. Yeah.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
that sort of thing too. It's a way of
Mhm.
time. Um,
Yeah.
one thing that I always do, that I find helpful is with like a to-do list or a Kanban board or whatever. There's usually a way that you can toggle and remove the completed items.
Mhm.
I don't do that.
You
I
like
like
to
to
see
look
them.
back and actually see like, oh, I
Mhm.
accomplished something today. I did that. So
Right.
what do you do, that sort of like reward thing? So if you do the 25 minutes or the 5 minutes of writing or whatever, I know you do this for the small human, but do you do that for yourself as well?
I do. Yeah, I do keep track of. I've been keeping. I have behind me. I don't know if Russ can really see it but I have taken a whiteboard calendar, and I am trying
Mhm.
to look at like the flow of promotion for the business and the podcast, and keeping up with like some social media stuff that I've been trying to do, and I've been keeping that as my reminder of I'm actually I'm actually working
Right.
to remind myself that I have actually done things. And part of this is because a lot of what we're doing, like with the podcast and with like promoting the business, is stuff I used to do for fun. So I had a hobby podcast that came out of my dissertation topic where, it was called Game On Girl. It was about gender and gaming. And I did this for years. I did this in addition to all of the other stuff that I was doing. So there's a part of my brain that is not recognizing that I am doing work now. Because this
Right.
was not work before. And so I had to like remind myself, I had to set up a system to remind myself, because then I would get to the end of the day and I would have done all this dopamine producing stuff like that
Right.
I used to do for fun, and I'm still doing it for fun, but like it used to be a hobby, right? And it's not a hobby
Mhm.
now. This is driving toward a business. So like I had to start keeping a visual tracking of, oh, like I spent hours yesterday preparing the notes for this podcast, and we're batching right now. So we're recording a couple today. So I spent a bunch of time working on notes. And then there has been a time through this transition where I would have been like, oh my God, I didn't get anything done today. But that's work.
Right.
So I
It,
had to like teach
hmm.
myself to remember.
That sort of takes me back to the special interest episode,
Right.
right? Where you're sort of, using your special interests to
Right.
benefit your business.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
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 And it actually, I don't know, maybe this is another episode, but because I'm totally off your notes here that you just mentioned, that kind of like little freak out in my brain of, oh yeah, I've got to pay attention to those. I'm scrolling through them. But
They're not as
the
long.
they're not. The thing that I was thinking is, uh there's sort of this weird thing between work and play, right? Like if you can turn work into play, does it
Right.
make it easier? Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you get stuck in the play, and
Right.
so then you
Yeah.
you stay
I
longer,
forget.
you
Right.
work
Right.
harder, you stay up
Exactly.
late, you now all the other stuff that we've talked
Right.
about.
And then like, and that's one of the things I think that's difficult about that is the chance of burnout increases,
Right.
because you are taking something that your nervous system is super interested in and making it something that you do for, labor, or for, capital, to make money. And then you have to be careful, because like when you're really excited, at least like when I'm really excited about something, like you've talked about, getting into one of your FileMaker, projects and just
Hmm.
working for hours about that. Like, you know, you have to be careful, because
Right.
that is what leads to burnout. And that's what, when I look back and now that I'm reflecting a lot on my career and, wanting to help people understand like how their neurodivergent brain is impacting their work, I realized how excited I was when I was teaching, like especially I'd say the first 10 years I was teaching. I got so much fulfillment from teaching. And that's part of what burned me out, right? Because I just gave and gave and gave and gave and gave. And then
Right.
once my ability to hyper focus to grade papers was gone, I couldn't really teach anymore. Like I couldn't do it because I didn't know how to teach without being able to use my hyper focus. And once the hyper focus was gone, that made teaching really, really difficult.
Right. Yeah. I did one of the business podcast that I do. I did an episode where somebody said, forget about, work-life balance. That's not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's work-life harmony. How can you do work
I like that.
harmoniously, life harmonious? Like, that's great. I love that. I've been, totally like, just since I heard that, I'm like, I love this saying.
I love that. I love that because like that's hard. Like balance is hard anywhere. But like if
Totally.
you can make your systems and make your work and it more harmonious with just how your life runs. And that's one of the things I'm trying to do as I'm building this, as I'm building the business, is make it so that it has longevity for me, because that's what I realized with the teaching was I didn't understand that relying on my hyper focus as such a strong component of my of what I needed to get my work done was going to backfire when it was no longer there, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally. So, okay, you're you're an entrepreneur. You're doing your own thing, so it's a little, you've got to manage everything.
Yes.
And manage yourself, and
Yeah.
sometimes yell at yourself for what you're doing or not
The only
doing.
one
But
holding myself accountable.
exactly.
Mhm.
But now let's talk about how do you, in the workplace, like when time blindness, let's say you're managing a team, and you maybe don't even notice time blindness or know about time blindness, so it's sort of going unrecognized. Like,
Mhm.
how do you, as a leader, or as a, maybe even we'll go both ways here, maybe talk about the leader and how they would deal with
Right.
it, but also talk about the the person that's working and trying to deal with time blindness.
Yeah. I think transparency is really the key here, right? So when you understand that you struggle with time blindness, being able to communicate it in a way that says it's not that I don't want to do this. It's not that I am being petulant, right, as an employee. I struggle with this, and being able to be clear with your supervisor, with your coworkers, etc. And I've said this before, but finding systems like, I'm using the whiteboard calendar right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I've talked about this before. Like I have to generate different types of to-do lists because I need the novelty in making to-do lists. Like they'll work for, a few weeks, a couple months. It depends on how much I get from them, but then eventually it will just not work anymore. And recognizing that my systems to support myself need to change. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm saying
Mm-hmm.
this out loud, because I'm also an external processor, um, maybe what I need to do is recognize that if I use the same system every week for several weeks and then it dies off, what I probably should be doing is using one system one week and then like alternating so
Mm,
that I don't drain the dopamine right away, right? Oh, well, let's go back
right.
to this one. Let's go back to this one, and kind of like teach myself to do a little back and forth in terms of those systems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In terms of being a leader and like helping someone with this, I think when you prioritize for your employees the outcomes you're looking for versus any kind of procedural rigidity, like where you get away from saying you have to do it this way, at, and instead looking at this is what we're looking at getting done, I think that just there will be a shift overall for both neuronormative and neurodivergent employees, because then it's like then everybody's looking at that trip to New Zealand, right? everybody's looking at that big thing at the end, the big outcome that you're looking at versus how did you get there?
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's particularly helpful too. And I constantly say this because it's my mantra myself. Try not to beat yourself up about these things because,
Totally. Yeah.
this is your prefrontal cortex not developing right and not knowing, I won't say right, not developing in a normal way isn't your fault, right?
Right.
Another accommodation that I did for myself that could be helpful in this is I took a whiteboard I have on my refrigerator and I wrote down how long it takes me to do certain activities in my kitchen. So, like unloading the dishwasher, which sometimes feels like this very daunting task, takes me like 3 minutes, really, when I do it, but it feels huge sometimes. I make bread in a bread machine regularly, and I'll be like, oh God, I have to make a loaf of bread. But it's like, oh, putting the ingredients for a loaf of bread in the bread machine is like 10 minutes long, like to measure, it's like
Right.
10 minutes, And so like
Mm-hmm.
I wrote it out so that when I walked into the kitchen and I felt overwhelmed by my environment, I would ask myself, how much energy do you have right now? I'm like, okay, I can do a task that's under 5 minutes. So it's either, taking the dirty dishes and putting them in the dishwasher or taking the clean ones and putting them out, putting them away. Both of those are under 5-minute tasks. I can do one of those. And if
Right.
I, done at the end of that, then that's fine. But creating like an inventory for yourself. So like if you have a specific task at work, figuring out, oh, this doesn't take 5 hours for me to do this.
Right.
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 And creating a list. So like when you sit down at your desk and you're having trouble like getting into, whatever you need to do for work, if you had a list that said, this is going to take me 5 minutes to do any one of these tasks, then you can pick from that.
Right. Right. And I think, the other big thing would be sort of scheduling chunks for like email and,
Exactly.
Slack messages and all that stuff, because so many people could just get lost in that and just literally just answer Slack messages all day or,
Yeah.
whatever. So it's like scheduling, I think,
Yep.
time blocks or, blocking time for
Mm-hmm.
certain things. So you have a chunk of time to do a task or a project or whatever, and then a time to do
Yep.
your email checks or your phone calls or whatever. And, I'm thinking like, when I used to do sales, I had a chunk of time dedicated to just calling
Mm-hmm.
and not like looking up leads or doing research or whatever, because you can get lost in the research and all of a sudden you're doing, an hour of research, you make a phone call, the number's disconnected, and now you've just wasted that hour, so it's like,
Exactly.
it's kind of, like no matter what role you're in, whether are dealing with time blindness or not, it's kind of nice to have this whole time blocking thing, and the advice that you're giving here, I think, works for just about anybody.
Yeah.
Any role, like
Yeah.
whatever you're doing in the workplace or
Exactly.
just in life,
Just
as
in
you're
life.
saying
Yeah.
with the
Exactly.
kitchen,
Yeah.
pick a 5-minute task.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah. And
and
I think I think time blocking is a really good one too, where you're like, okay, I need to, I need to sit down and I used to have to do tickets and I used to have to go into the ticketing system. And when I was managing, I used to have to go in and like follow up with other people's tickets to make sure things weren't expiring and things weren't left. And
right.
I would set out, I think it was every other day I did that. I would go through the ticketing system and look at not my tickets. Like my tickets I would have to pay attention to all the time, but like go through when I was managing other people and make sure they were staying on top of their tasks. And so I just set like, I think it was half an hour, 45 minutes every other day to go in and just check the system and make sure things were running the way they were supposed to be running and people are getting things done and follow up, because I was also managing a bunch of neurodivergent people too. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. So let's if somebody is experiencing this. They're seeing all the symptoms. And I know, like, this is one where it's so wide ranging, like from being late to being too on time, to being too concerned about time, to like, yeah, we're like,
right. I mean, it
hard
is
to break it down.
It is hard to break it down to just one, this isn't just one thing. There's so many different aspects of this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If somebody recognizes that, they come, like they reaching out to you, talking about that, or becoming a nerd. So talk to us
becoming
about
a nerd,
both of those things.
Sign up for my neurodivergent education resource discussion group, which is online monthly. And you can go to my website, divergentpathsconsulting.com, and click on nerd group and join my group and come hang out. And we're going to talk about resources to, I will talk a little bit like I do in the shows. I will give a little bit of information about like whatever topic of the month we're talking about, and some resources and ideas for how to handle it. But you'll also get a chance to share your strategies and to just get a chance to talk with other late diagnosed neurodivergent people who are, facing the same struggles.
Yeah. And I again, like I've said this in another episode, I know I can't remember which episode it was now, but like, I feel like everybody deals with this in some way. Like everybody's, and so learning from each other and talking about the strategies, I think is a great thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
I should probably go to your website and sign up.
Come nerd out. Time blindness isn't about laziness or carelessness. It's about how your brain experiences the world. And once you understand that, you can stop shaming yourself and start building systems that support you. If this episode hit home, I'd love for you to share it with someone else who might need to hear it. And if you're looking for community and conversation around topics just like this, come check out Nerd, my free support group for late diagnosed neurodivergent people. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes or at divergentpathsconsulting.com. Thanks for listening, and remember, time isn't your enemy. It's a tool, and I can help you find a way to wield it.